Okay, hey everybody. It is good to see you. I hope you've been as well as you can possibly be during these very different and unprecedented times. I know we've all been trying to figure out how we serve students with disabilities who have even more hurdles to overcome in the weeks ahead. I know we've all also got our own personal stressors. Caring for the elderly or ones who aren't well or our own young children. I know most of you know I have a 5-month-old at home, so I'm caring for him full time while working full time. So it's tough. And I want to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge that everybody really has been going above and beyond. So super good work with that. Like Lori said, this space is for general questions, going over the SpEd learning plan. If you have anything that's specific to a case or could be considered confidential, please don't bring it up into this space. If you need to email me because you have a parent who's emailing you that they want speech 10 times per week during the coming weeks, then you and I can troubleshoot that over email or a phone call or a different forum. And then I'm going to kind of be bouncing back and forth between the chat. First thing I want to get a sense of is, has everybody been able to see the SpEd distance learning plan that went out? If you could just type your answer in the chat, that would be helpful. Great. Brent says yes. Ms. Vargas says yes. Linda Geiser says yes. Breezy says yes. Awesome. And then my next question, are you all able to access the PD plan that went out? Fantastic. Okay. Awesome. And all of those offerings are available to you as well that apply. We have 2 specific on Friday that Water's going to do. The one in the morning is going to be on the unique curriculum. So if you are an ESN, self-contained classroom teacher, that would be appropriate for you. And then the one in the afternoon is going to cover all of our other programs like Learning A to Z, any potential, toolbar functions that you want, things like that. And that's available to everybody, ESN, MMSN, RSP, ISP, full inclusion, all of that is there for you guys. So let me click here.
In the classroom. Why is she in the classroom? The teacher's in her classroom. It's funny.
Hey, Glycel, it sounds like your microphone's on. So if you could just put it on mute and then type any questions in the chat.
I'm sorry, guys.
Helpful. So one thing that I'm going to do real quick here is in the chat, I'm going to link the SpEd distance learning plan general Q&A for the remainder of our time. So what the district has decided to do is roll out distance learning in 2 phases. The first phase is what we've been going through, which is essentially everything is voluntary that anybody wants to do, or we have just asked that people be general supports to their to the families and the students that they're supporting. During this phase 1, what the district has been doing is negotiating with all the bargaining units, so UTR, Teamsters, SSA, because this is a change to people's working conditions. We have been taking the guidance from the CDE and the feds about what is legally and not legally required. We've been taking the guidance from county health officials about how long schools will be closed, how long schools will be open for. We have been vetting different platforms that are appropriate to give services. So whether that's Zoom, Google Hangout, making sure that all of those avenues are going to be compliant with both HIPAA and FERPA that special education has to work on. So we're appreciative of that. We advised that if you are a self-contained classroom teacher, that you align with the practices of all the other gen ed teachers on your school site. You guys are teachers of record. And then related service providers and those who provide specialized academic instruction through like RSP or full inclusion to be a support to the other teachers you work with, general support to families, but to hold back on services until we give you guys the go-ahead, which will be starting on April 13th. So if you scroll down, there's a section in the document that says beginning the week of April 13th. Go ahead, start to serve and start to officially provide special education services. We are putting together a document that you're going to get shortly about how to log your services in SACE Service Tracker. So anything that we do during this time, you're going to be doing in there. Charlene Kibbe is writing directions that you'll get shortly. But if you would like to go and play around in SACE under the service tracker section, I have an administrative SACE login, so I don't think it's going to show me the same screen that you would all see. But I'll try and log into that and let you know. But you will go in there. It's actually a very user-friendly type of service tracker, and you'll put in what you are able to do. It will not be exactly the same as what you are able to do currently on your students' IEPs, and we recognize that. So something that is going to be going out, I believe either today or tomorrow, is something that's officially called prior written notice. So during phase one, this is also something that our department has been working on. Right now, this distance learning, as it rolls out, is technically going to be a change to every single student's IEP in the district. So we cannot hold 4,400 amendments reasonably and do that. So what we have to do is provide families with prior written notice. It's going to go on the district website, and we're going to ask you guys as case managers to distribute it to your families as best as possible. And what it does is it notices families that during this time, the district will be changing their service delivery. There'll be expectations that you make contact with your students, your families twice a week. You deliver services in whatever platform is feasible for you and your students. So you're going to be encouraged to use Google Hangouts, to use Zoom, to use Google Classroom if you have one of those set up. You can make work packets that you can distribute online. We know that's also not as accessible for some of our students, so we're going to be working in the coming weeks to try and troubleshoot that as well. We do have some teachers who've taken this on very well, and so we will connect you if you need support for ideas about how to do that. We will support you with that. And just looping back real quick, if you log into SACE, the black bar that runs across the top that says students, searches, reports, goals, under service tracker, there's a drop down menu. That'll be where you'll enter what contacts and what services you provide your students. Minda, could you retype your question for me? What is we can't contact family students? The prior written notice document will be available in Spanish and English. Yeah, the documents will be sent out in both languages. If you can't contact families or students because you have your own personal circumstances or anything else, email your program specialist and myself, and we'll assist you with that. That answer questions. So going back, so let's talk about, so essentially you're going to start serving them. As far as assessments go, Assessments, if you were able to complete your assessments before the school's closed and you have reports and you can go ahead and proceed with that IEP meeting, you're going to be allowed to do that. If you did not finish assessments, they need to be paused at this point. All of the standardized tests that we give, the WJ, the tests that school psychologists give, are not normed to be administered virtually. So essentially they would be invalid. So those IEP meetings will have to take place when school reopens and resumes. The state has given us a pause on all timelines, and it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if the whole country gets a pause on timelines given what's happened. So you don't need to stress about that. But what was communicated to us is that people are stressed about just the sheer volume of IEP meetings they would have to do when we return to meeting that you feel like you can hold virtually through Zoom or through Google Hangouts or through a conference call. During phase 2, you are going to be permitted to hold those IEP meetings. They still have to be legally compliant, meaning you'll have to get a gen ed teacher to participate, you will have to get an administrator to participate, you will have to participate, you will have to complete all the paperwork, and then when we resume, you will have to get everybody to sign up and do signatures on those IEP meetings. But if you would like to go ahead and do that, you may. The program specialists will be working with you. Some of the IEP meetings we will likely want to prioritize is if you have any transition meetings to hold for students going on 6th graders anywhere else and 8th graders if you are in one of the K-8 schools. Let me scroll and answer any of these. If you need a particular translator or an interpreter to make a phone call, email Perla Ponce. She is helping to work with our interpreters, and they have been starting to call in and assist you guys in phone calls that you need to make to families. If parents do not respond is one question to your attempts to contact them, then make a log and a record of that. You can put that in the safe service tracker, that you attempted to contact them, you attempted to deliver services, but the parents were unresponsive. Tina, I'll work with you on your AAC safe access. We do have access to most languages. We are doing Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Lao. I think there were a few other languages that we've been able to get support with. So transition IEP meetings, I see Brent asked a question about that. Work with your program specialist. We'll work to get those held as much as possible. Those are ones that we'll want to prioritize getting in place for the fall, especially if for any reason school does not resume. What about annual and triennial IEPs? Annual IEPs, if you're able to report on progress, complete them legally, compliantly, you can go ahead with those. Triennials, if the assessments were completed before schools closed, you can go ahead with those. If they were not, they need to wait until testing can be validly resumed. Privacy issues with holding IEPs, that's what we got vetted, which should be fine to do it through Google Hangout platforms other than those 3 at this time. When you hold those IEP meetings, you will want to put in the notes, this meeting was held virtually through Google Hangouts, through Zoom, through a conference call due to the COVID-19 school closures. So you'll want to put that in the meeting notes. If you do not have all those people and it's amendment for adding bus services, I'm going to tell you talk to your program specialist specifically before that, and they'll either give you a yes or no, or they'll double check it or run it through me. Preschool to kindergarten transitions 2 from Sarah. We're going to try and get that all worked out with Cameron, but we will want to go ahead and more than likely keep doing those meetings in that capacity as well. We do have interpreters that are attending meetings via Zoom and Google Hangouts as well that are available It just takes an extra level of coordination, but if we have families who need that in order to meaningfully participate, we're going to go ahead and do that. Just contact Perla at this point. And I'm gonna work with her if she wants people to start using like a Google form, but right now, mainly Perla for that. The PWN in other languages, I will talk to Mr. Berger about that. I know right now it's Spanish and English to start, but this meeting is recorded and I'll try and follow up on that. How can you assess if goals are met? That's a good question, Minda. If you could meaningfully assess before school's closed, if you have data that's accessible, if you have all of that and you can write it up, go ahead and document those goals as is. If you could not meaningfully measure progress, which would be very challenging virtually, or if you didn't get to it before school's closed, then please do not report progress. Do it at the next meaningful opportunity. So if we come back to school May 1st, we'll probably ask you guys to assess progress then, write it up. It may very well be that the next progress reports just align with the June reporting, and we make a note for the March reporting that schools were closed due to COVID-19. Maybe what we do. So some people did have the opportunity to do that, which is awesome. If you didn't, then we're just gonna wait for the next opportunity. The district is going to be posting the PWN, and then what we're going to do is ask case managers to follow up and send it home to make sure that their families got it, is likely what we're going to be doing. For contacting parents, the question is, how do you contact parents? By mail, by phone? That question came up in a meeting I was in with principals today about using personal cell phones. It's, I think, what people are comfortable. If you're not comfortable with that, we can look at maybe setting you up with other apps like Remind or email to communicate with families. There's ways to block your personal cell phone number, which I've had to learn how to do as well. So whatever way works best for you. If you're particularly running into challenges with that, then let us know and we can help you work through it. The mailing has come up. We do not have an answer yet at this point. What we think that we're gonna do, likely, if you have printed documents that need to go home to your families. So if you, for example, printed progress reports, we're gonna ask that you email them to your program specialist and we will work on getting them mailed out for you. Schools may be periodically opened very briefly, in which case we'll go into pupil services and use our mailing stamp machine to send out documents. So the program specialists are prepared. If you have issues distributing anything to families, let us know and we'll assist you with that. Some suggestions are in the chat about Google Voice and things like that. Can you affirm and attest an amendment when parent agreed through the phone conversation? Yes, you can affirm and attest an amendment. You can affirm and attest an amendment even without a parent's signature. What affirming and attesting and doing is saying, yes, this meeting was held. And that's what you do it as. I guess the question might be, if you check yes or no, that the signature was in place, I would probably just say no, because we have not formally received that signature yet. I hope that answered that particular question. What other questions? Let me see real quick. Sure. If your progress reports take an extra day to complete, that is fine. The challenge you'll then face is just troubleshooting them, getting sent out with your gen ed teachers. The ask was that everything goes out today, and so it's easier if you finish them in time that your gen ed teacher can send the progress reports home. If you need a little bit of extra time, that's okay. You'll just then be tasked with figuring out how to get those to families without the gen ed teachers. Collecting signatures will likely be when we're back at school. Signatures on IEPs will be back at school. So if you look at, and let me scan here. I think you should be contacting parents 1 to 2 times per week. If parents do not reply or respond, we want to just keep track of that and log it so it shows that we made services available. And we'll do that in SACE Service Tracker, and Charlene will be sending out directions about how to use that shortly. Another document that you can reference, and we don't have time today to go as we only have about 9 minutes left. You can look at the expectations for the gen ed learning and the amount of contact there, and that also is good to follow. You do not, at this point, you will not need to document you sent out the PWN. But we'll let you know. Just keep checking emails regularly from me so that you can see. I try and send out quick, brief updates on that. I believe the fact that we're going to notice it online will be enough, but our attorneys may advise that we want a record that you individually sent it out. And if that's the case, you'll probably make a note in SACE Service Tracker. Helen asked a question about contacting gen ed teachers. I would say contact them via email is the best way. All staff in the district are being instructed to check their emails on a very regular basis. And then different principals are using different platforms to connect with their staff. And maybe that'd be helpful to share in the chat if people just want to share, how are you connecting with your school site during this time? Are you guys all doing Hangout staff meetings? Are you doing Zoom staff meetings? How is that working? Are you guys meeting with your sites regularly? I was in a meeting with principals, and I think most schools are doing regular meeting. Zoom, Google, Zoom staff meetings, Hangouts. Yeah. I think that's the best way to stay in contact with your school sites. The PWN will go out either via email. Some people have shared with me that they use Remind to send information. It's another online way. Those will likely be the 2 forums to send it out. And then potentially a mailing we're looking at as well, but not sure about that at this point. What other questions do people have? Yes, you could use Clash Dojo to send out the PWN. Yeah, we'll give you the language is all in the PWN. I think when you just send families, you'll just send them a message that says, please see the PWN from the district regarding special education services. And then it's all will be in there. So a PWN, it's called prior written notice. So anytime that the district changes services or refuses to agree to a request, we're required to send families prior written notice. So it's essentially a written notification. It has 7 legal components that it has to have, notifying them of the change, why the change is happening, the data or the information that was used to consider the change, and then referring parents to their parent rights. So that's all been written and drafted by our departments and our attorneys. So you won't need to say anything specific about it. It'll all be written. You'll just notice parents that this is coming from the special education department. So there's a lot of flexibility. Minda's asking if you see students as a group, would that be allowed using the online formats? Yes, it potentially is allowed. You want to be cautious doing that, again, because you cannot predict when you're in an online forum with different people like this what might go on in the background of sessions or things like that. So there is a level of caution with doing group sessions, but it has been done. And people are doing it, and it is permitted. As far as a list of emails, Ms. Mooney, I would say check with your principal or your clerical staff if they're able to get that for you out of PowerSchool or somewhere. RSP services are kind of at your discretion, Vicki. They're what you're able to deliver within capacity and to meet your students' need. So that could be sending them homework. That could be logging on to one of their classrooms' Google Hangouts to push in and support. It could be individually doing a Hangout. There's a lot of flexibility within that. Ms. Vargas, I'm not sure about your question. Where specifically do we ask them to look? If you could retype that, that would help me. Yes, you can email. Yeah, if you don't have your family's email, you can notify your program specialist. You can also give the family a call and ask them for their email to send it to them. You could contact the student's gen ed teacher about getting them the progress report. You could do it all that way. Equipment going home. Let me scan what Julia is saying right here. So I sent out the Google form about equipment. Please fill it out if you have equipment that a student may need to go. Best case, or equipment that may need to go home for a student. Best case scenario is for you to call the different service providers associated with that equipment, whether it's PT, whether it's AAC, whether it's OT, and double check if this is something appropriate to go home. The physical therapists have expressed concern about some equipment going home that families do not have training to safely use, in which case we want to be very cautious about doing that. If you consult with the team and it's not appropriate equipment to go home, don't put it on the list. If you don't have time to do that, or you can't get ahead of that before Tuesday, tomorrow, when we need that form, that's okay. Once we get the whole list of equipment, we're going to go through and we're going to vet it, and we're going to look at things like that: AAC devices, PT devices, OT devices, and double check that either with families or with you as teachers before we set up a plan to get that out and get that delivered. Many students also, some of our students with more significant disabilities and physical limitations, they have a lot of that equipment duplicated at home already through CCS. So we'll want to call families and double check if they need those certain things. There is training for Google Hangouts and things in general on the district PD calendar. So yeah.
Actually, wait a minute. Hold on, Rachel. It's not on the. It's not on the PD calendar, the district PD calendar. Okay. The way you're going to find it is if you go to the e-learning website, and I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat. Once you're at the e-learning website, you click on teachers, and then you click on learning for teachers. And you'll see a schedule that looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I printed mine out. for the week. And there is a session actually right at 11:30 for Seesaw, and I'm giving one at 2 o'clock about video conferencing, and mostly that's going to be on Google Hangouts Meet.
Perfect. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. And I'm scanning our last questions because our time is coming to an end. There's a lot to digest and process. I answered as many questions as I could. We're going to look at putting together more of these, maybe for longer periods of time where we can get to more questions. For now, the things that I recommend you do: read through both the distance learning plan and the SpEd department plan. After you read through those, if you have ongoing questions, email them to me, and I'm going to try and compile some type of frequently asked questions document or other forum to get those answered. But please read through those a couple times. Other things that you can do is attend the different trainings that are offered this week for figuring out different skills that'll help you with distance learning. Another thing you can do is go on to SACE Service Tracker and start to play around with that and familiarize yourself with that platform. Will be sending out directions, but if you learn like me, oftentimes I take more in if I've played around with something first a little bit myself, and then I look over what people tell me to do. That's a helpful learning technique that I've found. The other thing that you might want to do is start looking at all your IEPs, your cases, start trying to think about what would be appropriate IEPs and feasible IEPs to hold and to do. Start thinking about lesson plans virtually, what is and isn't possible for you to deliver and you to do for your students. So those are some of the things I recommend that you do in the next week or so as we gear up for phase 2 of distance learning. And I'm very excited to see you all virtually. I'm excited we had this much turnout, and I'll be in touch with Lori about scheduling more of these since I think it's super helpful for you guys. And I just had to do a baby handoff with my partner who's logging on to his work meeting. So here's the baby, everybody. This is baby Ethan, 5.5 months old. And yeah, we'll keep working through all of this. A lot is still left, and we're figuring out as you figure it out, and lean on each other for support, lean on me for support. We'll get through this. And yeah, thank you all. Appreciate you.